Everyone, it's Sophia Hodgson from Rusty Blue 85 and I'm back with another card making tutorial on my YouTube channel. Today I'm going to be making a Valentine's Day card with a black and teal colour scheme with a sort of cosmic look. So just gave you a quick view of the card there. So I'm going to be starting back to front. I'm going to start with the envelope first, and I'm using a 12 by 12 piece of cardstock for that I'm going to cut down to 10.5 inches by 10.5 inches, and I'm using the We Are Memory Keepers envelope board for that. So I want to make a 5 by 7 card, but I've gone with the measurements for a 5.5 by 7.5 just because I know I'm going to be making a shaker card, so it's going to be quite bulky. So I've just cut that down with my paper trimmer to 10.5 by 10.5, and then using the We Are Memory Keepers scoring board, I need to put it at 4.5 inches to punch and then score. So you can see I'm just punching and scoring along the line. The board isn't quite long enough for this piece of card, so I will need to do a little bit of extra scoring using my score pal. But just following the instructions, line up the first line with the little notch that you can see on the punch, and line up my second score line with the notch on the punch as well, and keep punching and scoring as I go around. So this piece of card isn't actually black. I couldn't find any black 12 by 12, and I think I must have used all of mine up, so I'm going to have to buy some more. But it's a very, very, very dark grey, so I don't really think it's going to make much of a difference in terms of the colour scheme. So as I was saying, the punch board isn't quite long enough to get a 10.5 by 10.5 fully scored, so I'm just going to use my score pal and score that up. And I'm still using the same bone folder from the punch board because I really can't be bothered to swap over just for a very quick bit of scoring. So now that that's all ready, I'm just going to reinforce the score lines by folding it over and just creasing that with my fingers, because I'm going to have to fold it back out for doing all of the embossing. So now that that's ready, I've got a homemade stencil. I used lots and lots of heart dies from all sorts of different manufacturers. I've got some Lawn Fawn in there, some My Favourite Things, some Altenew stamps, dies even. And I just die cut them in a kind of pleasing manner from heat resistant acetate, and I'm going to be using the Heidi Swap teal embossing paste. Now I don't use embossing paste very often, and I'm sure that I would get much better results if I just used it more often, but I'm frightened of embossing paste, so I don't use it on a regular basis. But the second I thought about this card and how I wanted it to be, I was just kind of like, oh, I really need to get some embossing paste out and just emboss the envelope. So you can see that I'm using my spatula to spread that out across the stencil, and as you can tell from my hideous attempt, it managed to squish underneath, but never mind. So I'm going to put that aside to dry for now, and I've got some bits and pieces of Crafter's Companion matte black cardstock. And again, I'm going to be die cutting that with all sorts of different dies to create the little shaker bits that I want to put inside my shaker window. So those are all of the dies that I've scavenged from all sorts of different die sets. And I'm going to be using some of the watercolour paint that you saw me swatch in a previous video. If you haven't seen some of my kind of housekeeping tips and bits and pieces, then I recently swatched some watercolour paints so that I could get better use out of them. And again, I was just kind of like, oh, you know, this will go with the general colour scheme. So I'm just painting that onto just some normal matte black cardstock. This is not watercolour cardstock. So it didn't buckle too much. It wasn't too bad. but I'm just going to paint that first so that I can let it dry and put it to the side. And then I'm going to be using some different embossing powders that I've got as well to make all of the little shaker bits. So for the card, I'm, as I said, using a sorry to excuse me, I've got a bit of a cold. I'm going to be using the Waffle Flower A7 layering dies to get my card base, or the top for my card, and also the backer for my shaker bits. And I'm using the Altenew Halftone hearts, the largest heart, to die cut my shaker window. I've also cut a piece of acetate a little bit smaller using the A7 dies from Waffle Flower as well. So I'm just using some sticks to double-sided tape to adhere my acetate to the back of my shaker window. And as you can see, I really struggle with this. I'm getting it all over the place and it's a bit wonky and it will show through. So I'm having to pick it up and move it around. But in the end, I will be happy with it. I was originally just going to stick it down with the adhesive on the edges, and then I realised that I should probably adhere the acetate close to the edge of my window so that there's no gapping. So I'm just applying some more double-sided tape around the edges of the heart so that the acetate doesn't gap when the recipient gets it and gives it a good shake. Now I'm ready to remove my backing paper. So I'm just removing all of the backing paper from all of my bits of double-sided adhesive, and I'm ready to attach my acetate to my shaker window. So now that that's all stuck down, I need to get my little shaker well. So I'm going to be die cutting some adhesive foam that I got from, I think, Hobbycraft. So it's got adhesive on one side, and I die cut through that using the same heart die that I used for the shaker window. And I'm just going to peel the backing off. Oh, no, sorry. Before I do that, I'm going to decorate the front of the card, and I'm using some Perfect Pearls in a mini mister bottle, and that is my little splat box. I'm really sorry it's off to the side. It's very bad filming on my part today. So I'm also using the Hero Arts Shimmer Mist. Got lots of sparkle on this card, and I'm just using that cutout to protect the acetate so I don't get paint all over the acetate, because I'd like that to be clear for the shaker bits to still show through. And to maintain consistency between the shaker bits inside the well and the outside of the card, I used the same Cosmic Shimmer watercolour paint that I used to paint that piece of card earlier. So I've just put that aside to dry off inside the splat box, and I'm now using my VersaMark clear embossing, clear watermark ink to cover a piece of card so that I can use some embossing powder to make different teal coloured bits of card. So I'm using all sorts of different embossing powders. Sorry, excuse me. Still fighting off a cold. I also used some of the Crafter's Companion Centura Pearl in Turquoise to make more shaker bits inside the heart. I don't show all of the die cutting because it's fairly self-explanatory. So now that this piece of card is covered in embossing powder, I've just been heating my heat tool off to the side. I'm trying to heat from the back and the front so that I don't get too much warping. With this particular piece of card, I'm going to emboss the front and the back so that it doesn't matter which way around I die cut it. But certainly that wasn't the case with all of the embossing powders that I used, and also the Centura Pearl, the turquoise, the back of it is white. So you'll see me later very, very carefully placing all of my shaker bits in the right way round so that they're facing out, so that I don't end up with loads of bits. So I've done all the die cutting off screen because you really don't need to see that, but as you can see, all sorts of different teals and turquoises, and just setting everything into the window so that it's the right colour facing outwards. And I die cut as many little hearts as possible just so that I could really fill that shaker well. The fun foam isn't that thick, so it won't shake too much, which is why I wanted it as full as possible so that it would, kind of still look full when I sealed it up. So I'm just sealing it with some my favourite things, glue. You can use any liquid glue here. And I'm going to put that identical sized other piece of black card on the back to seal the shaker mechanism in place. And I'm just going to put something heavy on top of it. The Waffle Flower dies are quite heavy because they have that magnetic sheet inside them as well. But off screen, I'm going to put several other heavy bits on top of it as well. So for my sentiment that I'm going to be using today, I'm using the Lawn Fawn Scripty sentiments. And I'm so sorry this is off screen as well. My filming this time round was dreadful. So again, on the same black cardstock as before, I'm using my VersaMark watermark ink, used my anti-static bag to make sure that I don't get embossing powder where I don't want it. And again, for consistency, I'm going to use the same embossing powder that I used on the shaker bits. And I'm just getting my piece of paper to capture all of those bits of embossing powder because I generally make a mess and the cats really don't help when they decide to help out. So just tapping off all of the excess and heating it again with my heat tool. And I love this colour. I think it's so pretty, especially with the black. So now that that's all embossed, I'm just going to put everything back in its pot so that the cats can't knock it over. I had a massive accident with my white embossing powder where Anara decided to knock it on the floor. So once the embossing powder has completely cooled down, I'm just going to take a microfiber cloth and rub off all of that stray embossing buddy pad. So I've got some black foam squares that I got from Create and Craft. If you don't have black foam squares, they are so useful when you've got a dark colour scheme like this. And I'm just having a few issues with removing the backing paper here. But now my sentiment strip is all ready and adhered to the front, and that is essentially the card done. So I just need to adhere it to the front of my card base, which is a 5x7 pre-made card base. And I'm going to be using my Nuvo glue. I've gone through so much that I don't want it to buckle by using too much glue, especially with the wet glues. That can be a major issue for me. I just seem to go a bit overboard with glue and it really buckles the card base. So I really love this glue because it's sticky but not excessive in terms of liquid, so the card doesn't warp too much. So there is my card, and now the envelope is fully dried, and I'll be turning it over in a minute, but I'm just applying some more double-sided tape to the flaps to get it to all adhere nicely. And I'm going to put the card inside so that the envelope fits perfectly. Just peel off the backing paper attach the bottom flap. And I'm just going to add a little bit of double-sided tape to the top flap. And this will, I'll leave this with the backing paper on for now, just so that somebody can write their sentiment inside. But there you see, I've got the embossed envelope and the beautiful cosmic shaker card. So thank you so much for sticking with me. If you haven't already, please do subscribe and hit the bell icon so that you get notified of all of my updates. Please leave a comment in the section below to let me know if this is your kind of thing. And thank you so much for watching, and I hope to find you back here at my channel soon. Bye.